Welcome to FarView, the podcast of the Foundation for Auditing Research. In a recent FarView podcast, Assistant Professor Ulrike Thuerheimer talked about research on sustainability assurance. In this short addition to the podcast, Ulrike sketches avenues for further research concerning this important topic.
There's an evolving literature actually also on how the joint provision of financial auditing and sustainability assurance, how they work together to allow auditors to do their job better, in a sense that auditors also have to consider ESG risks in their audit, but also how the knowledge and financial statement from the financial statement audit spills over to sustainability assurance practices. So I think it's actually, there's lots of research questions and lots of knowledge we can gain, both for financial statement auditing questions, but also sustainability assurance questions. The foundation is probably much interested in these types of questions. And then generally, I think what we see in financial auditing research, and I quote Jerry Francis, the former FAR research chair here, right? We are going from big to small in our research. So a lot of the research questions start with overarching issues and kind of looking at institutions, how institutions develop and affect audit quality, to looking at audit firm characteristics and how they affect audit quality, to the partner, so the head of the team affecting audit quality, to now looking more specifically at how teams perform. And I think we see the same kind of thing happening in the sustainability assurance research. Lots of questions have been more like the bigger questions, right? The institutions, how they determine the assurance choice. We have looked at the assurance choice to begin with, then we have looked at assurance practices that are chosen, the assurance provider, and we have the first kind of insights into multidisciplinary teams and how these multidisciplinary teams behave. But I think going small here can really, really add value and insights to understand so what team characteristics matter here, to really understand the assurance process. There are so many unanswered questions when it comes to a sustainability assurance process. And I've mentioned the study on materiality and how financial statement auditors translate the classic financial materiality concept into the sustainability assurance process. And I think there are lots of questions around these areas that are actually not yet answered. A simple example, I always struggle to explain what limited assurance really is and what limited assurance entails as compared to reasonable assurance. And I haven't seen a study really on this, right? So what's really the difference in terms of the processes that the audit teams are doing to get to a limited level? When is the limited assurance level actually sufficient? How is that determined? I have no idea. No. So I think there are just a lot of like smaller questions, so going into the team and into the process, that can be extremely insightful for both research, but I also hope for practice. And then I think lots of measurement issues that we can think about. I've talked a little bit about measuring audit quality, where we at least have monetary values that we can analyze, versus measuring sustainability reporting quality. And for example, what the assurance provider, the auditor, does to actually enhance that reporting quality, but then also how can we measure that? And I think that's a really practical question as well, right? When is a sustainability report of high quality? And I think that's also something that we as researchers are thinking about. If we want to do good research on sustainability assurance, we need to be able to measure outcomes. So how do we measure sustainability reporting quality? Could be a very interesting question, because that would also talk or speak to the sustainability assurance quality. So that is another thing which would be interesting. And I think there is where maybe AI is coming in, right? If we want to talk about or measure the quality of narrative information, our large language models are probably going to be powerful and helpful in in allowing us to measure that type of quality. I think what we'll also see now with the European regulation, and even though it's kind of watered down, we will now have a setting where we have both reporting that's mandated, but also assurance that's mandated. So that kind of takes away some of the self-selection issues and some of the issues around econometric design that have plagued that literature, because you can control for it to some extent, but it's never perfect. So now looking at this in a setting where we actually have a mandate on both reporting and assurance is hopefully also going to deliver interesting insights beyond what we've seen so far. I have a bunch of other research ideas and research questions, and I could also be around the assurance market, right? Because we have certain European countries that have allowed only financial statement auditors to provide assurance, and then other countries have actually allowed third-party assurance providers outside of the accounting profession to provide assurance, such as France and Denmark have allowed that in their transposition of the CSRD. So there could be interesting questions around the assurance market. Who provides assurance? Who do these firms choose to provide assurance? Is there a benefit of having the financial statement auditor conduct assurance? Or is there a benefit of having an accountant assurance provider do it versus a non-accountant assurance provider? And again, that could speak also towards that initial research question on what is the spillover effect between financial auditing and sustainability assurance. And I think the European setting where we do see these differences, and we'll see also the choices that differ, can be interesting in that regard. Other things are related to maybe these going big issues, right? More about institutional questions. We haven't, for example, seen enforcement cases against auditors when it comes to sustainability assurance, but we do see it for financial audits. So how is the market going to react when it comes to these enforcement cases, if we ever see them, or how are auditors going to adjust their behavior? Again, coming back to limited versus reasonable assurance, it's going to be interesting if there's an enforcement case around limited assurance. How could that change the behavior of auditors providing this type of assurance? So I think there are a huge number of interesting questions that where FAR can really support with, providing data access, because for many of these things you do need interesting data, you do need access to personnel when it, for example, comes to these teams questions, right? How should audit assurance teams be structured to provide the best assurance quality in a way?